My best friend's fiancé was cheating with her cousin and using their engagement to steal from her family's business, so I exposed him at their party. I, 23 female, have been friends with Jean, 22 female, for 4 years now. We met during freshman orientation in college when we were both lost trying to find the science building. We instantly bonded over our shared love of true crime podcasts and hiking. She's always been there for me, especially when my dad passed away last year. She skipped her midterms to drive 5 hours just to be with me. That's the kind of friend she is, which is why this situation is tearing me apart. I never liked her fiancé Kurt, 23 male, from the moment I met him at a fraternity party 2 years ago. Something about him just felt wrong. That night, I watched him flirt with 3 different girls while Jean was getting drinks. When she came back, he acted like the perfect boyfriend. I pulled him aside later and called him out, but he just laughed and said I was jealous because no guy at the party was interested in me. Let me give you some background about Kurt. He transferred to our college in junior year and immediately joined the business fraternity. He came from a middle-class family but always bragged about how he'd make it big someday. Girls found him attractive because he had this confident way of talking, but to me, it always felt fake. Jean met him in one of her business classes. She was going through a rough patch after a bad breakup, and Kurt swooped in like her knight in shining armor. He love-bombed her with expensive gifts and romantic gestures. I later found out he was using his student loans to fund this lifestyle, but Jean was too smitten to see any red flags. Over the 2 years they dated, I noticed how Kurt would subtly manipulate Jean. He'd make comments about her weight, suggesting she should hit the gym more. When she got upset, he'd say he was just looking out for her health. He'd point out other girls' outfits and tell Jean she should dress more like them. He even convinced her to change her major from art to business because artists don't make money. My friend Clara, 23 female, met Kurt at a bar 6 months ago. She didn't know he was Jean's boyfriend at first. Kurt approached her, claiming to be single and a successful businessman. He bought her drinks all night and kept touching her inappropriately despite her obvious discomfort. When Clara mentioned knowing me, and by extension Jean, Kurt's whole demeanor changed. He begged her not to tell anyone, saying he was just being friendly and Jean would misunderstand. Clara told me about this incident the next day. I wanted to tell Jean immediately, but Clara begged me not to cause drama. She felt guilty about letting him buy her drinks before knowing he was taken. I reluctantly agreed but kept a closer eye on Kurt after that. When they announced their engagement last month, I couldn't believe it. Kurt proposed at a family dinner, right after Jean's father offered him a position in their family business. The timing seemed too convenient. Jean was over the moon, already planning a big wedding and talking about having kids. I felt sick knowing what kind of man she was planning to spend her life with. Their engagement party was scheduled for last weekend at their new apartment, which Jean's parents helped them buy. That's when I made a decision that I'm not sure was right, but I couldn't stand by and watch my best friend marry a cheater. I convinced Clara to come to the party, knowing Kurt probably wouldn't remember her from the bar. The party had over 60 people, so it wasn't suspicious for me to bring A+1. I didn't tell Clara to do anything specific, but I knew Kurt's behavior around attractive women when he's drinking. Sure enough, after a few drinks, Kurt started hovering around Clara. He didn't recognize her at all. I watched as he got progressively more obvious with his flirting. Clara played along but recorded everything on her phone. He bragged about his new job at the family business, implying he was more successful than he actually was. The breaking point came when he suggested they meet in his home office to discuss some business opportunities. Clara went straight to Jean with the recordings. I hadn't expected her to do it right there at the party, but maybe it was better this way. Everyone heard Kurt's voice clearly through the speakers, suggesting meeting up with Clara later and making comments about Jean that no engaged man should make about his fiancée. The party dissolved into chaos. Kurt tried to say Clara was lying, then blamed the alcohol, then accused me of setting him up. Jean's father looked ready to punch him. Kurt's parents jumped in to defend him, saying Clara must have led him on. Jean ended up throwing everyone out and locking herself in her bedroom. Now it's 3 days later, and Jean is staying with her parents. She hasn't suspected that I brought Clara deliberately, thinking it was just lucky timing. Kurt has been blowing up her phone with excuses and apologies. His parents are telling everyone that Clara and I conspired to ruin their son's happiness. I feel terrible about how public and messy it got, but I don't regret exposing Kurt. My best friend deserved to know the truth before legally binding herself to a cheater. Some of our friends are saying I should have found a less dramatic way to handle it, or that I should have talked to Jean privately first. But I tried hinting about Kurt's behavior before, and she never wanted to hear it. I haven't told Jean about my role in all this yet. Part of me thinks she deserves to know the whole truth, but another part worries it might hurt our friendship. She's dealing with enough right now without adding my deception to the mix. Was I wrong to set this up? Should I tell Jean I planned it? I keep wondering if there was a better way to handle this. Update 1. Hi everyone. A lot has changed since my last post. First, I want to thank everyone who supported my decision. Your comments really helped me feel less guilty about what I did. Things got more intense after the engagement party. Kurt started showing up at Jean's workplace and apartment unannounced. Her parents had to threaten him with a restraining order to make him back off. His family was even worse. His mother called Jean's mom daily, crying about how her son's life was ruined over some harmless flirting. His sister started posting cryptic messages on social media about how some women can't handle confident men and set them up out of jealousy. After watching Jean deal with this harassment for 2 weeks, I finally broke down and told her everything. I invited her for coffee at our favorite cafe, the one where we used to study during college. I confessed about knowing Kurt's history with Clara and my plan to expose him. I explained about the bar incident and why Clara hadn't told her earlier. Jean's reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of getting angry, she just sat there stirring her coffee, looking defeated. Then she started telling me things about her relationship with Kurt that she'd never shared before. 6 months after they started dating, she found messages on his phone with several girls. The messages were clearly flirting, with Kurt telling them how beautiful they were and how he wished he was single. When she confronted him, he claimed they were old friends and she was being insecure. He even turned it around on her, saying her trust issues would ruin their relationship. Over their 2 years together, 3 different girls had approached Jean about Kurt's inappropriate behavior. The first was a barista who said Kurt had been asking her out every morning when he got coffee. The second was a girl from his study group who said he tried to kiss her at a party. The third was his coworker who showed Jean messages where Kurt suggested they hook up. Each time, Kurt had an explanation. The barista was delusional, the study group girl was drunk and misunderstood him, and the coworker was trying to cause trouble because she was jealous of his promotion. Jean admitted she'd almost broken up with him 3 months ago. She'd found a dating app on his phone, but he claimed he only used it to make business connections. He could tell she wasn't buying it this time, so he suddenly proposed. He gave this big speech about how meeting her made him want to be a better man, and how he'd never risk losing her. Jean wanted so badly to believe him that she ignored her doubts. Then she revealed something that made my blood boil. Her cousin Sarah, 24F, who was supposed to be her maid of honor, had been acting strange since the engagement. She kept making excuses not to help with wedding planning and seemed uncomfortable around Kurt. After our coffee talk, Jean decided to do some digging. She checked Kurt's phone records since she was still on their shared plan. One number kept showing up at odd hours, like 2 a.m. on weeknights. When she Googled it, she recognized it as Sarah's number. The calls went back over a year. When Jean confronted Sarah, she broke down completely. She and Kurt had been sleeping together for the past year. It started at a family barbecue when Kurt cornered her in the garage. But it wasn't just physical. Sarah revealed that Kurt had told her he was only with Jean because of her family's money and connections. He wanted to get established in her father's company before leaving her. Sarah claimed she felt terrible, but Kurt threatened to tell everyone she had seduced him if she tried to end things. She said she'd wanted to warn Jean before the engagement but was too scared of losing her family's trust. The family is now completely divided. Sarah's parents are defending her, saying Kurt manipulated their naive daughter. Jean's parents are furious about the betrayal. Other relatives are taking sides, turning every family gathering into a potential battleground. Kurt showed up at my office yesterday. He cornered me in the parking lot, saying I had no right to interfere in his relationship. He threatened to tell everyone that Clara and I set him up, that we were jealous of his success and wanted to ruin his life. I recorded the entire conversation on my phone. When I mentioned having evidence of all his past behavior, including the bar incident with Clara, he finally backed off. Jean has moved back home. She returned the engagement ring by leaving it with Kurt's parents. She's blocked Kurt and Sarah on everything, even LinkedIn, where Kurt kept trying to send her messages. Some mutual friends are still defending Kurt, saying he deserved a chance to explain himself. They're calling me a horrible friend for testing him instead of talking to Jean directly. But seeing how much he manipulated and gaslit my friend over the years, I know exposing him was right. Jean deserved to know the truth, even if the way I went about it wasn't perfect. Update 2. Things have spiraled into something much bigger than a cheating scandal. What started as me trying to expose a lying fiancé has turned into a full-blown criminal investigation. Remember how Kurt was working at Jean's father's company? Well, 2 weeks ago, during a routine IT security check, they discovered suspicious activity on their servers. Someone had been accessing confidential files about upcoming projects and client information late at night. The IP address is traced back to both Kurt's work computer and Sarah's home network. After a thorough investigation, they found out Kurt had been working as a consultant for their biggest competitor while pretending to learn the family business. He used his position and Sarah's help to access information about upcoming bids, client contracts, and future expansion plans. Sarah, who worked in accounting, had been changing her login times in the system to cover their tracks. When Jean's father confronted them with evidence, Kurt tried throwing Sarah under the bus. He claimed she had seduced him and then blackmailed him into helping her steal company information. According to Kurt, Sarah was bitter about not getting promoted and wanted revenge. But his story fell apart when they found emails between Kurt and the competitor's CEO dating back to before he even met Jean. Then something completely unexpected happened. A woman named Lisa, 25F, showed up at Jean's house last week. She introduced herself as Kurt's wife. Yes, you read that right, Kurt has been married this whole time. He married Lisa 3 years ago in Nevada and never divorced her. Lisa found out about Jean through Facebook's relationship status update and had been investigating Kurt's activities. Lisa revealed that Kurt has a pattern of targeting wealthy families. He did the same thing to her family's real estate business in Nevada. He married her, gained access to their company information, and sold it to competitors. Her family lost millions before they caught on. By then, Kurt had already moved states and changed his number. The police arrested Kurt and Sarah yesterday morning. During questioning, Sarah broke down and confessed everything. She admitted that she and Kurt had planned to sell more information after the wedding when he would have full access to the company's records. The affair was real, but it started because Kurt needed someone on the inside of the accounting department. Kurt's wife Lisa is cooperating with the authorities. She brought evidence of his previous scams in other states. Turns out, Kurt has been doing this for years, moving from one wealthy family to another, either through marriage or engagement. The police found at least 3 other cases where he'd done something similar. Clara came forward with more evidence. Remember how Kurt used to flirt with women at business events? Well, that was his way of gathering information about other local companies. He'd get women talking about their jobs and family businesses, then use that information to approach his next targets. Jean is completely devastated. Finding out that her entire relationship was an elaborate con has really messed with her head. She keeps questioning every moment they shared, wondering if any of it was real. Some family members who defended Sarah are now trying to apologize to Jean, but she's not ready to forgive anyone. The business thankfully didn't suffer much financial damage because they caught Kurt and Sarah before they could sell their latest project plans. But the emotional damage to the family is huge. Sarah's parents had to resign from their positions in the company. They're still defending their daughter, saying Kurt manipulated her into everything. I've been helping Jean deal with all this while also giving statements to the police about Kurt's behavior at parties and his threats toward me. Yesterday, Jean thanked me for bringing Clara to the engagement party. She said if I hadn't exposed Kurt then, she might have ended up married to a con man and brought even more damage to her family's company. The whole thing has become bigger than any of us imagined. What I thought was just a cheating fiancé turned out to be part of a multi-state corporate espionage scheme. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't trusted my gut about Kurt being shady. Update 3. Here's the final update on this insane situation. The trial dates for Kurt and Sarah have been set for next month. They're both facing serious charges for corporate espionage and fraud. Lisa, Kurt's wife, provided evidence showing similar scams he pulled in 3 other states. Her testimony was crucial in building the case against him. Jean's family business has recovered from the security breach, but family relationships haven't been as easy to fix. The extended family is still divided over Sarah's involvement. Some relatives insist she was just another victim of Kurt's manipulation, while others see her as a willing participant in destroying her own cousin's life. Sarah's parents were forced to leave their positions in the family company. They've been telling everyone that Jean ruined their daughter's life by pressing charges. They conveniently ignore that Sarah chose to betray her cousin and help steal company information for over a year. Last week, they showed up at a family wedding uninvited and caused a huge scene, demanding people stop treating Sarah like a criminal. Jean has changed a lot since everything happened. She's more cautious now but also stronger. She's thrown herself into working with her father to improve their company's security. She's even started taking cybersecurity classes to better understand how to protect their business. Some mutual friends who initially defended Kurt tried apologizing after his real identity came to light. Jean blocked them all. She says anyone who defended a cheater doesn't deserve to be in her life, especially now that they know he was actually a criminal. Clara's story has a surprising happy ending. She started dating Detective Rodriguez, who handled the corporate espionage case. They met during her witness interviews and really connected. At least something good came out of this mess. Kurt's family has been trying to distance themselves from his crimes. His mother showed up at Jean's office last week, crying about how Kurt was a good boy who got led astray by Sarah and Lisa. She actually tried to convince Jean to speak on Kurt's behalf at the trial. Security had to escort her out. Lisa filed for divorce and is helping prosecutors find Kurt's other potential victims. She's already identified 2 other women he was engaged to while married to her. The authorities are investigating whether he scammed their families too. Jean and I are closer than ever now. She jokes that I should start a detective agency since I spotted Kurt's shadiness from day one. I'm just relieved my best friend didn't end up married to a con man who would have destroyed her family's business. The whole experience taught us something important about trusting our instincts. I knew Kurt was bad news from the moment I met him, but I never imagined he was running a multi-state criminal operation. Jean doesn't blame me anymore for how I exposed Kurt at the engagement party. She says my dramatic method probably saved her family millions in the long run. This will be my last update on this situation. Kurt and Sarah are facing significant jail time, Lisa is helping build cases against Kurt in other states, and Jean is focusing on moving forward with her life. Sometimes the messiest way of exposing someone turns out to be exactly what was needed. For those wondering about the engagement party drama, yeah, it was messy and public, but looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. Better a ruined party than a ruined life.